Hobbiton's a pretty magical place, and if you're watching this, you probably want to know a little bit more about it. I'm Luke of All Trades, and we visited Hobbiton in April of 2025. Let me tell you about our experience. We started our tour from the Matamata iSite. Full disclaimer on this, I may not be pronouncing names from either New Zealand or Hobbiton quite correctly, so don't judge me too harshly for that. Feel free to leave a comment down below if I mispronounce something. Anyway, we started at the Matamata iSite, which is kind of like their visitor center. You see these all over New Zealand in all the little towns. They only do tours once a day from the Matamata iSite, but we thought this was a great way to see Hobbiton for reasons I'll get into a little bit later. At the iSite, they've got some souvenirs, and this is where you check in and actually get your tickets. There's a little guidebook they give you as well, but we didn't use it at all because you're being guided around through the whole place, so you really don't need to reference it. But it's good to go back and review afterwards. When the time came, we boarded the bus, and it was raining a little bit, so we were starting to get worried, but it would turn out to be okay. One neat thing from starting your tour in Matamata is that you actually get a video introduction on your way to the Shire. And I don't know if you see this if you're at the Shire and you book there and you can see this somewhere. We got to see behind the scenes of how they filmed things, how they built it, a little bit of history of the site. We'd hear more as we walked it, but it was nice to see a little video version of that. It was between 20 and 30 minutes to drive there, and you really get to enjoy a lot of the scenery. When we arrived at the main Hobbiton set tour location, we could see there were hundreds of people waiting to get loaded on buses and to go on these tours that they run every 15 minutes or so. We didn't have to wait at all there. We just loaded up a few more people on our bus and took off for the tour. Our tour guide, James, joined us on the bus. He goes by 007. If you ever go on a tour there, you'll notice the same. There's a few Jameses, so you got to watch out. On the way there, he told us about the property and a little bit of history of it. They showed another short video about more of the location. We got a little glimpse of Hobbiton as we drove onto the property. And then we got to see some of the sheep up very close. They were actually driving sheep down the lane. It was pretty crazy. So our bus had to stop for a minute, and hundreds and hundreds of sheep went by, as well as a couple of the ranchers that work at the farm. We got off the bus, and it was raining just enough that they said everyone should grab an umbrella. And so we did. And we stood around and we got our introduction to Hobbiton. This is the only sign for Hobbiton you will see. We walked that famous path that you see when Bilbo says he's going on an adventure. And I recognized it immediately. Not too many other people did. We started off in a garden area and got to see some hobbit holes. This is where I found it was really interesting because they would really just turn you loose and say, here are your guardrails, don't go beyond this point or that point, stay on the trail, but you have a decent amount of space. We weren't all crammed together in one little area taking pictures of the same thing. We got to kind of explore and look around and focus on the details we wanted to see. It was really nice. You could take pictures as much as you want. There were really no limitations on it whatsoever the entire tour. All the hobbit holes are decorated very uniquely. It really looks like there's a story behind each one. So the set dressers should get a lot of props for that. Props, see what I did there? We continued our tour and James told us about the different hobbit holes and how they're themed around different characters that exist. So there's the beekeeper, and then there's the town drunk, and there's all these different characters that they'll tell you about. These are all living plants. There's only one plant that's kind of important but is not alive. I'll get to that in a moment. We walked around Hobbiton and enjoyed the scenery. The rain actually stopped just as we got into Hobbiton. That first little garden area, it was sprinkling a little bit, and basically while he was talking about all the different areas, the rain stopped, and we really got to enjoy Hobbiton the rest of the time without using our umbrellas. So we carried them around just in case it started to rain, but it never did. We got really lucky there, or we were blessed. The views around Hobbiton are really amazing. From one vantage point, you can kind of see some things that don't belong in Hobbiton on a faraway hill, but the rest of the time you're looking around and you don't see light poles or power lines or anything like that that would give you a sense that you're not in Hobbiton for real. It's a very immersive experience, and if there weren't these other tour groups walking around, you would swear that some hobbits are going to walk out of a hobbit hole any minute. And in case you're wondering, the one plant that's supposed to look alive but isn't is this tree over Bag End. You may notice the hobbit holes are actually at different scales. Some are human scale, and some are hobbit scale, and some are 3/4 human scale. If you put a person next to a human-sized hobbit hole, it will look like that person is a hobbit because they then fit in the doorway. However, if you put them next to a hobbit-sized hobbit hole, you look like you're a human in the hobbit world, so the hobbits look smaller. So little kids just look like hobbits that fit right in. All but 2 of the hobbit holes are completely fake, meaning that they're just a door and kind of what you see through the window. You know, it goes back maybe a foot or so into the hillside. But there are 2 hobbit holes that they have actually built out fully. And these are full apartments, homes, whatever you want to call them, with at least 1 bedroom. I forget how many there were. I think there were maybe a couple of bedrooms. There are real items in there. I thought this blanket was pretty cool. There's a real fire in one of the hobbit holes, not in both. So you know which hobbit hole you went in if you can remember, was there a fireplace or was there not? You can lay in the bed if you don't put your shoes on the bed. You can sit at the desks. You can walk around. You can pick up a lot of the things. It's very, very immersive. It feels kind of like you're walking through a home that's being staged to sell, although it's a little messier than that. It looks like you're over at someone else's house, honestly. It's very, very cool. You hear about immersive experiences at other theme parks. I would say this hobbit hole is right up there. There even are a couple of real items in the kitchen that give it that smell of a kitchen because it's real onions. They don't have potatoes though. It's a little surprising. After your group splits and goes through the 2 hobbit holes, they'll join back together and walk over to the Green Dragon. I will say there is a fair amount of walking. You have to have a little bit of stamina to go up the hills and stuff. One of the older ladies in our group did get a little winded and had to take a break, and they took care of her. It was fine. But just know that it's a decent amount of walking. If you think this is just going to be a, show up and look at stuff and then go back to the car, like, no, you're walking through Hobbiton. You end up at the Green Dragon, which is the bar in Hobbiton, and you'll be given 1 free drink. They have both alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. The ginger ale that I had was actually really good. There are scones and hot pies and some other little snacks that you can buy that can hold you over. The cookies were pretty good, or biscuits, as they say. After 20 minutes or so at the Green Dragon, we finished up our tour, walked back to the buses, and got another little video on our way back to the main drop-off point.
Hey. Lovely to meet you. See you later.
After 20 or 30 minutes at the gift shop, then we loaded back on the bus because we needed to go back to the Matamata iSite. If you're staying in Matamata, I would recommend you go ahead and book it to go from Matamata because it seemed a lot easier and a lot less crowded than going out to the actual Shire and having to find parking and waiting in longer lines and finding more groups. It's so much simpler at the Matamata iSite. Sorry if it's full because people have been watching this video, but it's the way I'd recommend doing it. I hope you've enjoyed this brief look at Hobbiton. It is a great immersive experience. Whether you like Lord of the Rings or love Lord of the Rings, I think you should go check out Hobbiton, and I would recommend it for anybody going to New Zealand, even if you somehow don't really care about it. Have you been to Hobbiton, or what's the most interesting thing that you saw in the video? If you have questions, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. I'll try to answer as many as I can. I've got more videos about things in New Zealand related to Lord of the Rings, mostly involving Weta Workshops, which is one of the companies that built a lot or all of the props and costumes in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all those movies. So check out those videos on your screen now. Stay curious and have a good one.